What inspires you? Near Battle Lake, Minnesota, Paul Eidenschink sits upstairs in his home and paints vivid nature scenes, all inspired by what he sees out on the trail, experiences he has on the many lakes of Minnesota, and stories from his childhood. See what it means to keep your brushes wet. This is Up North Arts.
Production funding of Up North Arts is made possible in part by First National Bank Bemidji, continuing their second century of service to the community. Member FDIC. Hug Hydronics, committed to making in-floor heating simple, providing in-floor heating solutions for both commercial and residential. More info at hughydronics.com. Closed captioning of Up North Arts is provided in part by Renaissance Hearing Center, committed to enhancing your hearing, allowing you to enjoy life's most important moments.
I'm Paul Eidenschink. I am a husband, father, painter, writer, fan of nature and travel. And I grew up in central Minnesota. Brainerd was my hometown, and went on to college in North Dakota and have a career there today as a business leader for a manufacturing firm based in North Dakota, and a family-owned business. And it's been quite a journey. Yeah. So art for me, or painting, is a recently acquired hobby. So just since COVID, like 2020, I started painting. And it's kind of a funny story, but we purchased a lake cabin on Otter Tail Lake, and the previous owners owned an art gallery. And they had the home built around that. They had recessed areas in the exterior walls with accent lighting where they put art pieces up. So when we bought this place and had all these spaces, we had to find some art. So one of the things we did before they had moved on is we looked at art that they had in their house, and I asked about one of the pieces, and it was an oil painting of some sailboats moored in a harbor, and it was a misty scene. It was really gray, and I really liked the piece, and I said, well, what would it cost to buy that? And I was informed that it was an original art, an original piece, and in oil, and it was over $20,000. And I thought, my reaction was, well, how hard could it be? And so from that point forward, I started painting. And so it actually was a piece of art I couldn't afford, and I thought, I can do that. So yeah, that's what inspired me to just dabble in it. The mediums I use, I started with watercolor, and just trying to capture the scenery around the lake, sunsets and sunrises and boat scenes and all sorts of things. And then I moved on to acrylics. I do acrylics as well, and oils. So those are the three for me. This is kind of a fun project. So I did a little sketch. Julie said, well, I want to, she was thinking of a truck. I've done a lot of old trucks. And so I put our home, the home you're standing in, is in the painting. So that's what we did. So anyway, but I had done this larger sketch of it, and she said, well, I like it, but she said, I just want, like she's doing it on a phone, like zoom in. So I folded all this back, stapled it off, and said, okay, that's the part I'm painting. So that's what we do. But I'll grab, let's see, there's a tub of water down here. You have to move a thing. I'll just kind of reach around here. Get that out here. That guy will work. All right, so in this particular shot, what I'm doing, the light source, I don't have a moon in this one. Oftentimes you use moons, but the light source is this horizon that's still lit. So it's coming from this side. So I want this side of the truck to be darker, and then over here where that light's hitting, this will be kind of a brighter red is what I'm shooting for. We'll see how that all comes out, but I'll just start out with some some red on here and see what that looks like. I can also let it dry and then darken it later if it's... There are some areas here that I've used some masking fluid and masked off so that stays white even when I'm painting over it. So that you can see these rims will look like chrome afterward when all of it's painted, and I'll flake that off. There's the bumper, the glass in there, and then the various things here. Also these birch trees have been masked as well. So I'll flake that off, that rubber cement, and then I'll paint in the birch tree later as we go. So that's kind of what I got going on here. From the start, we lived in a rural setting, and so I was an outdoor enthusiast. So I would spend all of my time outdoors that I was allowed to. Summer, fall, spring, winter, all year round. I'd be out there. If it wasn't cutting a trail through the woods, or it was building a fort, or it was riding a snowmobile, or, we had a dog. It was kind of interesting. We had a breed of dog that was part Alaskan elk hound. And so when I was small, we had a sled, and that dog would pull me on the sled. So I would take rides through the woods, and they were really snowmobile trails, but it had enough strength that it could pull me around, and I really got a kick out of dog sledding at that age as well. When I was a little bit later on, when I was a teenager, for example, I'd hunt waterfowl. I was into duck hunting and that sort of thing. And I remember spending a fair amount of time sketching in a notebook. And I would sketch, waterfowl with their wings cupped, coming down into a set of decoys. And that was very inspiring for me. When I couldn't hunt, when the hunt was a week away, I'd start sketching. But it was something I did often. I had old notebooks, and I had, maybe some school notes in there, and then I'd have some sketches and things that I had done. But yeah, certainly enjoyed that. A lot of writing as well was another creative area for me. See if we can liven up the tops of these a bit. The light's hitting out. I debated on whether to put that spruce tree on the truck, before all the tailgate and everything was painted, but I thought, I'll probably mess up the tree if I try to paint around afterwards, so we'll just do that. Now, I also debated on whether to, sometimes I'll include, like a specific brand, like, if it's a Chevy truck or a Ford truck or something like that, some of these old ones, but then you get people that buy it because it's a Chevy or a Ford, then they don't want your truck if they're not a brand loyalist for that particular whatever you use. So, okay, I'm gonna keep some of that definition where the fender meets the box and so forth there. And the light's coming down this way, so I'll probably the higher up in the truck we go, I'll probably do some straight up crimson, and then we'll switch to some of that mix with the black. So it's we'll go kind of vertical here. A lot of the trucks that I paint too, I kind of bring out some old engineering tools. I have some French curves and things in the drawer here, and I'll try to get the curve of the truck. This one's pretty straightforward, but some of those old trucks, well, they're tricky to get the sketch or to draw them right there. Just a quick update. Like I said, I'm gonna peel off those big ones and make some of them starbursts and things, but it's just kind of the next step in that one. Probably switch over now and let this thing kind of rest while I do the work on the loon next. I'll bring in another little portable easel and we'll work there. So I would still consider myself an amateur painter today, and I like writing just as much, but I have a harder time selling written words today than as opposed to paintings. But I would say, I've always said, keep your brushes wet. So I talked to my sister, who is an artist from way back when, and I'd ask her, when's the last time you did a painting? And she would say something, it's been a while since I've got my brushes wet. And I'd say, I keep mine wet all the time. If you just keep trying things and perfecting that craft, you just get better and better and better. So there's certainly a level of mastery which you can, with some educational help, could probably accelerate the journey. But I'm on a journey, and it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy when people purchase something because someone else sees the value in it as well. That's satisfying to me. So, but keeping my brushes wet just means keep improving. It's a journey. It's not an end in itself that, oh, I'm a master painter. I'm not anywhere close to that. I hate to even refer to myself and master in the same sentence, but it's just something that you continue to refine your craft and get better as you go. So inspiration for me comes from experiences. Get outside, try some things. When I travel, I would say too, I take hundreds of pictures, and I delete many of them, but I just take pictures. I'm annoying that way to travel with. I take a lot of photos because I see light and shadows and colors that inspire me. And it might inspire me, the color mixture, for a completely different topic. It isn't necessarily that scene. I might apply it in something in my backyard as well. But a lot of times it's just along the way. Like, we're all busy, say we're hiking and it's kind of a fitness hike, but you look down and there's some of the most beautiful flowers you've ever seen in your life and something unique to you. And you just gotta literally stop and take time to do those photos. And my wife is used to this. A lot of times we'll be walking and then she'll realize she's walking by herself because I've stopped along the way. Yeah, so that's me. It's a hard one to answer, why I keep coming back to doing painting. But I would say that it's like telling a story. It's capturing something unique in nature maybe not everyone would see. So I do paint some subjects that some of the animals you don't see every day, like bobcats and timber wolves and river otters and things like that not everybody is privileged to see. And so those subjects, I think, are just fun to people want to put them on their wall because they're unique and they're something you don't see all the time. But it's also just telling a story. To me, like I said, there's usually a conflict where someone's caught a big walleye, they're bringing it in, and just as it's getting to the net, it gets loose, right? You can see the line has come loose, the jig is fallen off, the minnow's in the water, and they're scooping for that fish, and it's balanced on the edge at the far lip of the net. Are they going to get the fish or not? But it's like people like to tell stories. It's like I'm telling a story over and over again, but different experiences that are unique, wildlife that's unique, and landscape scenery that's beautiful and inspires you or takes you away when you look at them. Art can be, capturing the joy and capturing emotions in video, in paintings and pictures. It can be capturing, like I said, the time and place. I love going to like the art galleries in Europe and seeing what things look like. It's like photographs from centuries ago. It's just amazing how that captures that. It could be paintings on a rock wall as well, pictographs or something. But I think it's sharing with people that. So the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so I don't know if this is relevant, but one of my first art festivals I did was a rather large one. I kind of bit off a big chunk, and I went to a festival that attracts a lot of people every year. It's near Underwood, Minnesota here, outdoor festival, and I got a booth and I set up, and my goal was to sell one painting to someone that wasn't a family member or friend of mine, so didn't know me, and buy it because they thought it was worth buying. And I had the great privilege of selling 20% of my paintings that day. So it was really, really a success in my terms. My goal was to sell one. And what was interesting though is I found is if I could tell stories and speak to the potential buyers, I sold a lot more art. So it wasn't just someone walking up to a painting that doesn't know me, but there's part of me that's in that painting. There's a message in that painting. And so being able to tell the story, and when I can visit with people and say, let me tell you the story of each of these paintings that you're looking at, almost always they will buy something because they can relate to one of those stories, and they want to, now that they understand what it means, they put it on their wall and it just has more value. So this is obviously very simple subject matter. I don't have a lot of background in it at all, but there's a chickadee on a branch, and there's a pine cone here. And I was looking for just not any pine cone. I was looking for a pine cone with a bad hair day, kind of a roughed up pine cone. But there's some symmetry with the bird on the branch and the cone on the branch. It's like he's got a companion or something like that. So I did this one, and I was just kind of horsing around, and I showed my wife, and she said, maybe you should put that in a frame and we'll put it on the bathroom wall. So I just cut the mat with the scissors and took an old frame, and it's not even a real piece of paper that artists would use, and put it on the wall. And it was just one of those that kind of was symbolic that I can do better. And I was inspired to try again and to do more.
Let's see if I can do a little bit of that darker on the bottom. I might have to paint the white portion on afterward because I didn't rubber cement it in advance to leave it light colored. I like to also take a little bit of the white, dollop around the outside. It's just like moisture. It's like reflections of the water around your eyes. But a loon is wet all the time. Who knows if they really have that or not? But it seems like it adds an effect to it if you can just put the littlest bits of. And sometimes I have to smear them around afterwards, the dry brush. Maybe a little black in between inside there. So using a very fine liner brush with just a couple of hairs, I guess, seems to be the way to get at this. See if I can get that. I had it and I lost it. Okay, well, I'll do a dash of white on there for the moment and see if it works, or else I have to let it dry. We'll try some of that Chinese white. I can spend a lot of time, but it seems like on the abstract-y type bird pictures, if you can get the eye really clearly defined, that seems to be like the focal point for the person viewing the painting. So I just went and painted them all, and I changed the style of the clip on here. I made it round, and I did a couple other little things, minor modifications. Obviously it's a fish cleaning board to start with, and so I did that, and I painted the oars and the old fishing rod in there, a fiberglass rod, and it's a rowboat, and it's got all the charm of the days gone by. But it's just sitting on the shoreline, waiting to be pushed into the lake. And instead of putting like the name of the boat or something, I used my signature on the boat. It's got my name on there instead. So that was the way I signed the painting. So yeah, I forgot I had that here. Yeah.
The lighting is very important. The background's very important, and I think of it as like a nice photograph where you've got your subject very clear, and the background is this blur. But the colors are there, right? So I think of it as doing it like a photograph would be. As I did a bit of photography, but then a lot of what I do, even if it's abstract in nature or there's motion, let's say the fish is throwing a big splash of water, but then very clearly paint like the eye detail. So there's a detail in the wildlife. It could be the eye. It could be a lantern in a boat, whatever that is. It's a point of clarity, and it draws the viewer's eye focused right to that spot. So it's not just all blur, but there's usually a point of clarity. It could be the mouth, it could be the gills on a fish, a few scales on the nose, but a specific area within the painting that is quite focused, and the rest can be action driven. So it's like you captured the motion, if you will. So this one here, I call this the Lantern series, and it's one of those where I had planned the light. I had made a sketch before I did the painting. I just happened the sketch ended up staying around in my desk somewhere, so I was able to show this. But I actually was thinking about a lantern that you hold in your hand, giving like a yellow glow. And in this case, I had a full moon as well, so there's white glow in the background. So this painting has got 2 light sources. It's kind of a simple painting. It's a couple guys fishing at night. They're holding up a trophy walleye that they caught. And the one gentleman is holding up the lantern, so there's a yellow glow. And lanterns to me have always been kind of an intriguing light source. So as a kid, we had some antique lanterns in the basement. It was like my mom and dad from their farms, maybe when they grew up or those ages. We also had a hunting camp that didn't have electricity. So every year we'd go and we'd sit under the glow of this lantern and we'd eat meals together and tell stories after a day in the field and so forth. And it always was kind of this, it just gave, it gave a, it's like the golden hour of the sun being high and low in the day. It just adds a kind of a feeling to the room that it's closeness. You gather together under the lantern, whether you're ice fishing and you have one sitting on the lake, or in this case, they're sitting in a boat. So I've always liked lanterns, and it's kind of a nostalgic thing of the past, and they're still in use today. They might have LED bulbs, but people do them. But the yellow glow of a lantern, I just thought was a different light source, and just added some variety to the paintings. And so, yeah, kind of an old-fashioned. It's an old-fashioned boat, a couple of older gentlemen, and this old lamp. So the moonlight would be in white, and the lantern, of course, the glow on the fisherman, the net, and the lamp itself. Part of the motor here is in yellow, and in the bow of the boat, though, it's got the moonlight. You can see the waves. There's 2 different colors on the ripples around the boat. So yeah, trying to capture the 2 light sources. I was trying to paint a lantern in this boat painting that you see, and so I started with just a side profile of a lantern. And I said, what does that look like? And then I started drawing it at various angles until I got it right. And I got really close on this one. You see the question mark I wrote, but the top is too round and needed to be more elliptical. And so I went at it again and I drew this and I said, that looks like the perspective on a lantern from the top, but it still looks like a lantern. You got the globe and you got the wire. And so that's what I captured and put in the painting, was this perspective. But it took me a long time to figure out just the lamp. So, and I even do some sketches in advance of some of the paintings where I'll plan the lighting I want. There's an axis where it's light, and there's an axis where it's dark, and of course the contrast is where it gets some of the vivid features. And there's some art forms, even you study in Europe and see some of the original masters, the oils, where they have a very black background and a very vivid foreground. And I do some of that even in flowers and things, where I'll do a black, like a forest background, but then the flowers just pop and the colors stand out in the contrast. So, but lighting is everything to me. And then if you can capture motion, actually, and in a still painting, that's interesting to do, but fish that are thrashing at something on the surface and spraying the water and trying to capture, birds, their wings in motion when they're in flight and so forth. There's other, I would say, lighting, and then motion if you can capture it, and then any kinds of themes that where it's man versus nature, but nature wins. The fish getting away, just getting out of the net. Those are things that I love to do, versus just saying, I painted a fish and it looks like a fish. I try to tell a story. There can be a conflict where I'm painting one right now where there's a cow moose crossing a river and a bull moose following her, and there's a larger bull moose on the other shoreline. So there's a love interest here. So there's going to be conflict. It's wolves fighting over some old bones. It can be, things like that. But I just like to capture more than just a picture of something that looks realistic. I believe that all people are creative at their core. It can be very different. It might be visual arts. It might be performing arts. It can be culinary arts. When my mother was alive, she was just a wonderful cook, and going to her house was a gift to be served her meals. They were just phenomenal. She would also paint her yard bright with flowers every year, just the gardens she would have. She'd paint blooms in her yard, if you will. So it's a different kind of art. But I think everybody's an artist at some level or another, and it doesn't matter what your trade is or but I think you can learn a certain amount of technical skills, and everybody could paint, if you will. But some people may not enjoy it as much. That may be their creative release. But I think everybody has a creativity bone in their body that if you develop that competency, you find satisfaction and joy in it. It's personally satisfying. I think if you get to know a person enough, you could help them say this is what your creativity might be. You know, it's obviously their personal decision, but I think it's just a matter of you know, looking at what they do, what they find joy in, and their passion, what they do in their free time, and it should speak to that, you know, that creativity side. Yeah. I want to encourage you to pursue your dreams. I mean, really, whatever you find joy in. There's art, and it does not have to be a painted art. It could be in any number of ways, but I just think people are their best when they're at their creative side and they're in touch with that as well. I mean, we have to have some kind of a job that, you know, feeds us and puts a roof over our head, and those things are required in life. But aside from that, there's a creative side of you that's just waiting to be developed, and there's great joy in that too. So I just encourage you to go after it and try it. And start with your family and see if you've got refrigerator art, or if you're ready for the Louvre, and see where the journey takes you.
Production costs for this program have been made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the members of Lakeland PBS.